How many times have you bought a fulsome pot of basil from the supermarket, full of promise, and within a matter of days it's drooping, yellowing or collapsing? Frustrating, isn't it? Well, don't worry, it's not your fault. The truth is, herbs like this were never going to thrive. But the good news is, you can absolutely rescue them, turning one pot into multiple pots of thriving, bushy herbs that will keep you in fresh pickings all summer long. Today, I'm going to show you why supermarket herbs are designed to die and what you can do to rescue them. At first glance, these supermarket herbs look fantastic, don't they? They're leafy, full of life, and quite good value for money. But if we get one and have a look a bit closer, we can see that what we've got here isn't in fact one plant, but dozens of little plants. I've gone on a bit of a shopping spree today and bought some of the most common potted supermarket herbs. We've got basil or basil, as well as cilantro or coriander here, some parsley, some chives, mint. I wanted to get some thyme but couldn't find any. But what all these herbs have in common is that they are really rammed into these pots, shoulder to shoulder. You can see that they're all competing for very valuable light, water, nutrients, and space. And as they put on growth, they're very quickly going to run out of resources. The reason supermarket pots of basil and other herbs are grown this way is simple. They're designed to look as good as possible at the point of sale and not to last. To do that, growers cram in these plants, these little seedlings, into one pot so that the pot gets fuller quicker. They can sell them on, turn things around and get on and grow the next batch. These will have been grown in optimal conditions as well, usually in big commercial greenhouses with artificial lighting, just the right amount of watering and regular feeding too, so that by the time they reach the supermarkets, they really are in tip-top, perfect condition. The trouble is, of course, the moment they leave that intensely controlled environment, they are going to start struggling. And then you throw in the fact that they're really overcrowded, and it won't take long for your lush looking herbs to really start failing and falling to pieces, quite frankly. And it doesn't matter how often you water them, whether you sing to your plants, they're soon gonna die, basically. So let's fix this, and it's super easy to do. Now, the first thing you'll notice when I take this basil out of its pot is this really dense, tangled mass of roots. These plants have pretty much no room to breathe, let alone grow, and this is very much the root of the problem here. What we need to do is separate out all of these individual seedlings. So what we're going to do is carefully, as best as we can anyway, tease apart each individual little plant so it's got as much of its original roots as possible. Don't be afraid, basil is pretty robust and it might sulk for a few days, but it should bounce back afterwards. So look at that, that's got a good little root system. I probably snapped off some of the roots, but that's fine because we're going to be taking off some of the top foliage as well to balance it all out. If you do find that you've over-egged it and pushed your luck and hasn't got much root like that's not great, it's probably all right, then you can always just leave those aside. Now this pot has got way more than a dozen seedlings. This has got more like sort of 20, 25. So I'm going to be a bit selective because I don't need that many. These little ones here I probably won't pot up, and we'll just go for the biggest and the best and give ourselves maybe 10 really good little basil plants. So I've got loads of basil seedlings here. These ones on this side would probably be okay, but they're a bit on the small side and I've got plenty, so I'm not going to bother with those. But these here, I've got, about 15 of them, and they're all really good size, so we're going to pot these ones up. Each basil plant gets its own pot, and I'm going to just make sure that when I pot up a basil, it's going in at the same depth it was at before. Now, hold the seedling by the leaves if you can, but these have got quite thick stems and I've got a very gentle grip, so it'll be fine. And the potting mix that I'm using is really light and airy and fluffy, and I've actually improved the drainage a bit further by just mixing in some perlite that I had. It's a light, inert material that really helps with drainage, and basil especially loves good drainage, so that will really help with that. But the priority is to use a good all-purpose potting mix that's you know, got good nutrition to it, just to get our little plants off to the best possible start. And as I say, a little bit of extra drainage is good if you can, but not essential. Well, I've got 15 basil plants, and I could have got more if I had potted all of them up. So that's a pretty good result from one little pot that cost me less than $2 or £1.50. Not bad at all. But the final job is to give them all a good water in. It's a bit of a grim old day and it is raining, but what this does is it will settle in the potting mix around the roots so that it kind of settles into position, removes any air pockets. And remember, they've had some of their roots probably torn apart, so this will just help them settle in without getting too stressed. Cilantro or coriander is a lot more delicate than basil, and trying to separate out all of the individual seedlings is nigh on impossible, and I don't think it would really work either. The stems are just too delicate and easily damaged. So my way of dealing with these guys is, rather than separating out into individual seedlings, is to do little clumps, and it just kind of comes across naturally, something like that size. So in a typical pot you'll get between, say, 4 and maybe 6 little clumps like that. I'm not going to break these down any further. Now I'll pot them up just as before into their own pots, and what I find with these guys is that once they are potted up, is that some of the outside plants actually die and go yellow and flop and everything, and it looks a bit devastating for the first few days or so. But then the ones in the middle kind of get their mojo back and grow out, and then about 2 or 3 weeks later they look absolutely fine. And I'll show you some I did earlier so you can see what I mean. And here's our curly-leaved parsley, which is going to be done exactly the same way as that cilantro or coriander, so into, I don't know, 4 to 6 kind of little clumps and potted on. I'm just watering each group of herbs as I go, because those roots will have been torn apart and they will be quite stressed. So I'm watering as I go. Here is some cilantro or coriander and parsley that I potted up about 2 weeks ago, and you can see how quickly they recover. Lots of fresh new growth, and they've bushed out a bit as well. You can see here there's an old dead yellow leaf there. You can just pick off the old leaves like that, and then you've got really healthy looking herbs. And these will last for many, many, many weeks rather than just a few days. Chives and thyme are exactly the same again. You can just split them up into as many little clumps as you want, and then either pot them on, or I actually like to plant them in kind of rows outside in my vegetable garden where they have really good pest benefits, and I'll show you those later on. And then there's mint. Now, mint in the supermarket is actually usually one plant still. It sometimes creeps along and looks like more plants, but this is indeed one plant. You could leave it in the pot. It's going to last for much longer, but I'm going to make it last even longer by just simply potting it on into a bigger pot. Well, would you look at all of the herbs that we've got from just 4 pots originally? That's incredible, isn't it? We've set them up for success now. What we now need to do is make sure we look after them properly to expand their lifespan as long as possible. That way we'll be picking them for months rather than just weeks. Light is crucial, especially for herbs like basil and thyme, which need at least 7 hours of sunshine ideally to help them stay compact and bushy. So a sunny windowsill indoors would be absolutely fine, or in a greenhouse or a sun-trapped patio like this. Now, if your basil is in a sort of shady spot, it'll just grow tall and etiolated and really won't thrive. These herbs are from the Mediterranean after all. Cilantro or coriander and parsley, on the other hand, prefer things a little bit cooler. So if you are going to grow it outside in the heat of summer, maybe pick somewhere that gets a bit of morning or evening sunshine, but that is somewhat shaded from the heat of the day. While mint seems to be happy just about anywhere, but if you are growing it on an indoor windowsill, then keep it in a sunny spot for the strongest, healthiest, bushiest growth. Watering is the next piece of the puzzle. We want to keep the potting mix consistently moist, but not overly waterlogged or anything like that. And one way to try, of course, is the old finger test. Just pop it down to the first knuckles depth, and if it's dry, go ahead and water. Herbs growing outside in the heat of summer may need watering quite frequently, even daily if they're growing in pots. Now, a little feed goes a long way, so you can help them along with a general purpose liquid feed applied maybe every 2 weeks. That'll be really useful for container grown herbs as well. Incidentally, these parsley here and the chives there were all grown from split up plants from the supermarket. You'll find loads of options for herbs, by the way, in our garden planner, complete with full growing information for each of them. And the garden planner will even give you tailored sowing and planting dates for each herb based on your location. Another secret to success is how you harvest your herbs, picking them or cutting them free. Now, a big mistake is just to pick leaves willy-nilly, taking the biggest leaves at a time. That will just lead to much more drawn out, straggly plants that aren't really thriving. The trick is not to pick off the biggest leaves, but to be a little more surgical. Let's start with our repotted basil. Now, what I'm going to do is make a cut just above a leaf node. That's where it joins the stem. And now you can see the 2 little leaves either side will form 2 new branches, effectively doubling my harvest in a few weeks. Now, what I would do is harvest like that every time, just making a cut just above a leaf node where there are these 2 little stems here, and they will grow out, and with time increasingly bush out my basil plant until it's a lovely thriving bushy dome of a herb. So again, I'm cutting just above that leaf node where those 2 little shoots are there, and this will help to create much bushier basils, as I say, and they're not going to be on a long single stem then. They're going to have more balance and they're going to grow a lot more kind of rounder. Now, I want to show you some I actually cut 3 weeks ago to show you how much they've come on in that time. Here's one here. Now, if we look closely, you can see where I've made the cut there. It's now healed over, and those 2 little shoots, well, they're beginning to come out, aren't they? And with a bit more sunshine and warmth and the progress of summer, well, we'll have a really fantastic plant by the end of it. Well, that's a nice little lot for some pesto this evening. Now, for cilantro or coriander or parsley, it's just a question of taking down the leaves as far as you can go for picking off individual ones like that, making a cut above a leaf node if you can to help them bush out. Mint is harvested very much like our basil there. So this is the plant we potted up earlier. Now, what we can do, it's already quite a bushy plant actually, is we can tidy this up by just taking all of these longer stems down to a few inches, say, and then that'll again help us to bush out this plant, and then continue to do that whenever you harvest your mint to keep it bushy. Honestly, mint is such a hero for planting out in the garden from supermarket grown pots. This here is an apple mint, which I've got in a sort of dappled shade bed here. It grows as a ground cover and it does creep out. We're not recommended to plant it directly in the ground, but I just pull out any stray bits and I mow around here to keep it all within bounds, and it offers generous pickings and from one solitary pot. These thymes here were also grown from a supermarket pot of thyme. Now, thyme is a bit slower growing. You could say it takes its time, but by planting little clumps of thyme like this in a row, I've now got this beautiful dense cushion of my beautiful herb. Now, I just come along as and when it's needed and take off the taller stems and cut them down to keep this plant nice and bushy and compact, and me in lovely aromatic leaves, perfect for roasting with my veggies. Keeping supermarket basil and other herbs alive for longer feels a little bit like cheating, doesn't it? But we're gardeners as well as cooks, so good for us, I say. Now take things on to the next stage by unlocking the infinite herb hack, the simple way to keep herbs going forever. Just head here to find out how, and I will catch you next time.